welcome to The Force Always. My name is Diz, aka David Zammit. Let's get on with the show. The news, the views, the reviews and interviews. And, it is the morning where I am right now recording this, which is Melbourne, Australia. But you can watch this at any time. It's up to you. Let's get on with the news anyway. So, referring to the title of this particular episode, Stepping Down and Being Stepped On, that is technically the news that is circulating the Star Wars fans and others at the moment big time. Kathleen Kennedy has stepped down from being the Star Wars Lucasfilm president and will be replaced by Filoni and Brennan in the, I'd say, automatically or the coming days. That is what's happening. I'm sure everyone that is a Star Wars fan knows this. I don't think it's big news, but it is news. To my opinion of this will be later in the show. To more news, Galaxy's Edge, Disney's Galaxy's Edge, which one is in Disneyland in Orlando and one is in Anaheim, LA. Great place, I tell you, great place. But now it's going to introduce some legacy characters, and I think they'll start introducing legacy sort of sets or, sections besides the, Millennium Falcon, which is legacy, and it is there. They will be having characters like Darth Vader, Chewbacca, because technically when you go there, the whole sequel trilogy feel is there. It still has a Star Wars feel, no matter what, trilogy you're into. It does have a Star Wars feel, but they're going to introduce more legacy characters. Again, Darth Vader, Chewbacca and stuff like that. You will see, and I'm sure they're going to sort of extend the park, or they may, reconstruct part of the park. It is a big section. I've been to Anaheim one. It was really impressive, especially the rise of the Resistance ride, I think it's called, which was amazing. I tell you that you feel like you're on set on a Star Wars film in that particular ride. But anyway, that's also what's making news at this time. And to more news, no news is at the moment getting frustrating. No news on the Mandalorian next trailer or official trailer or brand new trailer or whatever trailer. We have snippets of new pieces in particular teasers, trailers, but because of this whole Kathleen Kennedy thing, and it's caused quite an intensity with the Star Wars fans, they may get to release a trailer to sort of dampen things with people and sort of maybe create a bit of buzz, positive buzz. So we may get this in the coming days. I predicted still it's a Monday night football game in America where they'll say this is the teaser to the trailer that comes out tomorrow, something like that. But there's no news yet of an official new trailer for Mandalorian and Grogu. It's coming out in May. It's too close. It's really close. And to Starfighter, the movie, which is coming out 2027, in my opinion, no news is good news with that. They're sort of getting on with the production in the editing scene, so that's good. No news. I'd like to see some stuff, but I'm happy to wait, and I really want to see as less as I can before the actual movie. But knowing Star Wars being a blockbuster, it's going to inundate us, in the next year or so. Anyway, that is the news. My views is my story ideas that have Star Wars, and it is it's something I accept. I accept the story for what it is. I accept Star Wars from start to finish for what it is, because it's a great adventure in space. Whether it's good or bad, I'd like to change things or whatever, I still accept it. But I'm gonna keep this quite short today because quite big news today about Kathleen Kennedy. Wanted today, the last 24, 48 hours now, maybe a bit more than that. So my story idea is pretty straightforward. Should we see any Skywalker lineage in up and coming movies, which is if it is in episode 10, 11, 12, should it be in Starfighter, which I'm wishing is episode 10, but it's a wish. But because it's the reason why is because it's coming out in the 50th year anniversary of Star Wars. It would be great if that was number 10. It would just be iconic. But if it's a standalone, it's fine. I'm with it. Anyway, so should we see it? I think it'll be hard. It will be hard because the Skywalker family is really interesting and just so built and great. Like it's a great story to be told, but it's been told. We do need to move on from it. I'll say no. I think we should just move on from it. We need to move on and recreate something else to captivate the storytelling of Star Wars. That's what I think. That's my story idea for this time around. Very quick and basic. Just want to move on if I can. Now, speaking of the controversial Skywalker family, and also speaking about Galaxy's Edge just before in the news, one of my prized possessions, and this is quite heavy. Now, it does work, but at the moment the batteries are just on a download at the moment, so I can't really fire it up, but I'll show you. This is one of my most prized possessions. When I bought this, I thought, man, I love the used look about it. And I thought I'd buy something that was completely new to the Star Wars ideals in buying, products, rather than being a Darth Vader thing or a Luke Skywalker thing. I bought at Galaxy's Edge this, and it's quite heavy. Some people may recognize what this is. This is Rey Skywalker, as far as we know at the moment, unless it gets retconned or whatever it is. This is her actual lightsaber. I love the look of this lightsaber. It's amazing. I mean, obviously the Anakin Skywalker lightsaber is just absolutely beautiful. But this one, how it's got the sort of used look about it, and it is heavy, I'll tell you that. It's great. Now, this one does come with a screw-in saber part. Funny enough, it's yellow, but funny enough, when the battery died, when it was dying, the actual color, I don't know if this is a fault or something, it just happened, but it turns red, which is interesting because Rey Skywalker technically came from the dark side, which is the Palpatine family. That's very interesting, a saber doing that. But when the battery was dying, I noticed it was a reddish color, not red, but reddish. I think it could have been just a dying battery. I don't think I don't know if the technology is that far ahead where it decides when it starts dying that it could change color. I don't know, but I did notice that. But this here is just beautiful. I love it. I've got a couple of sabers, and this one, to me, is a 10 out of 10 because it looks like it's from the set. It's just it's that used future look. I love it. Rey Skywalker. Anyway, that is a 10 out of 10. Anyway, so that's my review for this time around. Let's get into interviews. Now, you can send in your questions and comments to this particular episode for the next episode. Send it through the YouTube channel, as I don't really have Instagram and X or Twitter at the moment running for those type of questions. And from the last particular episode I did, I'll answer the questions and read the comments deemed appropriate. But before I get this started, I really want to extend on the title of this particular episode, which was stepping down and being stepped on. This is I'll do this as quick as I can, but at the same time, explained as much as I can. My thoughts on the whole stepping down and being stepped on is actually includes everyone that is in Star Wars. Now, I find Star Wars, personally for myself, something I gravitate to because I love the look, I love the sound, I love the story, it's great. But it also does reflect in one's life when there's something that, you want to learn from, you've had some tragedy in your life, and it really does act as almost like a therapy and a learning tool for what to do and what not to do. I find Star Wars that intense, it is something like that. I do believe that a lot of Star Wars fans who gravitate to Star Wars have that type of reason in them as well. Not all, but part of. And I think Star Wars really brings in people who've had a bit of a downer in life, and they sort of seek salvation, and Star Wars becomes their sort of their brother, their sister, their mother, their father, whatever you want to call it. But I think at the moment, and let's concentrate on Kathleen Kennedy, stepping down. She just simply said she's stepping down. She discussed about what, the process. But right at that point, there was no particular exact reason why stepping down. There was nothing about being tormented. There was nothing about being the fans didn't like her. Nothing like that. She did explain that further down the track in the actual article, but no direct, straight after she said stepping down point was there given. No reason. Which suggests to me that I just think Kathleen Kennedy, for the last 6 or 7 years, has been absolutely tormented like hell. Let's just imagine for a moment that we, or I, or you, is Kathleen Kennedy. She's out there, being a president, doing what it takes to become a good president of Lucasfilm. And I think she did the job well. We may not have got exactly the Star Wars the type of films that we wanted, but there's a large percentage of those particular films that are still very good. The point that I'm also going to make, I love George Lucas. I think he did something remarkable. He went against the odds in making Star Wars in 1977, probably before that, and he went against the odds, and he just achieved something that was out there, and he really brought it in there. Like, he just really worked extremely hard. But he also did, when he passed on the baton, he did sell it. He sold it to Disney. Kathleen Kennedy was the one to retrieve it. She was announced as the president. She would take it over and things like that. So when someone sells something, like let's say it's a car or it's a business, then you need to understand, unless it's a part of the written agreement, that you are taking this and giving it to them and you're getting a transaction. In this case, he got $4 billion. Now, he did have treatments, he did have stories for other Star Wars TV productions and movies, things like that. What degree of, the script was written, the actual detailed story. I mean, he did create stories, but what degree level, like, did he finish scripts? We don't know. He may have said it's, finished stories, but was it actually finished scripts? But anyway, that's not the issue here, is that he sold it. And when you sell it, you have got to let go. And he has let go. He's become, more interested in his gallery that he's got opening up in LA. He doesn't really sort of involve himself in Star Wars that much. He has been part of some Star Wars celebrations that I've been to. A particular one was, I think it was Orlando. And, he's sort of, out there as a special guest and whatever. But when you sell something, that's it. That's it. Now, even though Disney is a big, powerful company, and they can just do what they want, when they want, how they want, they need to sort of think of this transaction as a business. So when you buy a particular product for $4 billion, you need to really think of how do you get your money back in the best way possible. Now, Star Wars is not about money, but this is a transaction. This is about money. That's why it's called show business. As once a famous YouTuber that is still on the air right now said, it's show business, not show friends. Some of you out there may know who I'm talking about, and he's a great YouTuber anyway. Let's not get into that. But you need to somehow make the money. Now, if you're going to start using legacy characters and, continuation of legacy characters for a length of time that is, quite long, then you do need to pay under the copyright laws of each movie. You need to pay other people when you have bought it yourself for $4 billion. Yourself being Disney. So you've got to just think of, and plus you want to have Star Wars move on and become this new canvas. And I think, I understand, and it's hard to sort of see Luke Skywalker, it's hard to see Han Solo, it's hard to see Princess Leia, the legacy characters, die, or whatever it is. Their story wasn't told as much, and they never came back together again. But it's just a part of letting go. And I think letting go is a very hard thing to do, especially in Star Wars, and moving on. Hence why I thought Episode 8 was good, because it was original. But hence why I think Force Awakens was good, because it still had the cycle of Star Wars, as we know with the 1, 2, and 3 movies. Always 1, 2, and 3 has a cycle that is similar. They may have come a bit too much on the nose similar with Force Awakens, but it was good. But still, Star Wars was sold. So you need to create. She needed to create a big transition. And in the process was heavily criticized by part of the Star Wars fans and by part of non-Star Wars fans that are movie fans. Now, it may not have, the stories may have not been told in the best way, but this is just, unfortunately, the person that becomes the face of the transition, and it's not going to look good for anyone. I think the era of George Lucas, for himself, and I think he would agree, especially the ridicule he got back in the prequel days, moving on was fine. But then when you sit back and sort of look at the Star Wars films at the moment, you go, this could have been that could have been that, this could have been done better, that could have been done better. Yes, I agree. But at the same time, this is the story. And I think us as Star Wars fans, especially the hardcore ones, especially the ones that are featured on YouTube channels, which I love, those YouTubers that have Star Wars shows, I think they've got great perspective. But this stepping down is one thing, but stepping on is another thing. The ones who have been bullied in their life have now become the bullies within this space. And I think they need to understand, just let's think of the mental health of Star Wars fans up and coming, the mental health of Kathleen Kennedy, the mental health of being negative is not a good thing in life. It is an out of control disease in this world that causes repercussions to other people too often, unfortunately, in becoming world news events. Not to say, something out of Star Wars is going to be a world news event in that magnitude of, dislike, but Kathleen Kennedy did a good job, just not exactly how they wanted the story to turn out to be like. It just didn't happen. And I wish, I'll give you two examples. I wish that George Lucas, back in the prequel days, had the transition of understanding where Anakin came from was the Emperor Palpatine. That I would have loved that. Him being the dad. It would have been the Tales of Dads. But I let go and I said, you know what, this is the story, and it was good. I would have liked to see in The Force Awakens coming, to a newer Star Wars, I would have liked to see, Luke Skywalker be more heroic and be the one that grabbed the lightsaber in The Force Awakens in the snow, other than Rey, because that would have just tore the house down. But I just, I said, you know what, I understand what they're doing. They're just, Rey's the new sort of centerpiece here, and I sort of get it. I got it. And that's the story. But the constant stepping on people, whether you've come from a normal life, loving Star Wars, or you're one of these people that are in the actual space of, official Star Wars writing or production, we need to just, have a moment and think of the mental health. It's just out of control. That's my piece. I really feel for Kathleen Kennedy at the moment. It's been inundated on the news. But that's, I just wish she's in good health at the moment, mentally, because the onslaught is out of control. Anyway, that is my opinion about the stepping down and being stepped on. Anyway, let's get on to a fun part of the interviews, which is the questions from people. And let's get on to it. Michael from Werribee South. Boy, we're talking about mental health. This guy, he is finding a way in Star Wars, and he's not even a Star Wars fan, and he's starting to love Star Wars. I love it. So let's see what questions he has, and you can send in your questions. Ask him questions if you want. His first question is, in the interviews, is who are the other members of the Palpatine family? Well, besides his father, his mother, and his brothers and sisters, it's not really talked much about. But he did have a son, a clone type of son, which is referenced. And his name was Dathan. We did see a little bit of this son in Rise of Skywalker Episode 9. He also did have a grandchild, which was Rey. So we had Rey, the famous Jedi that's in the sequel trilogy 7, 8, 9. So that is who are the other Palpatines. Because, Rey, even though she pronounced herself to be Skywalker, she is a Palpatine. Anyway, so to more questions by Michael from Werribee South is, why has the reception of The Rise of Skywalker been so polarizing? Some fans hate it while others love it. Well, there's definitely more hate with the Star Wars community for this particular film. When I reviewed this with a friend of mine, I thought it was good. Like, there's definitely a difference between an Australian perspective and an American perspective, but there's also differences in how people see films, and I thought it was a good film. I enjoyed it. I mean, I would have liked to see other things happen within this space of, the Episode 9, but it was good. The film was enjoyable. It was good. I particularly enjoyed the part where Rey there's a sound thing that happens when Rey sort of steps up and goes up against her grandfather and Palpatine, and there's just this really big energy that happens then. It's in that period of the film, which is towards the end, which I thought was great. It was really emotionally impactful for me, anyway. But the Rise of Skywalker has been, it's sort of, I think it's been passed on by a couple of people that it's not that good, and people sort of started to believe this, especially when you put the tag, it's a Disney film. People started to ridicule it for that reason. And this is what I was sort of touching on before about mental health. Whoever has bought it. Let's accept they bought it, and let's enjoy the story. Unless you want to buy it for $4 billion, and then if you want to buy it for $4 billion and let it sit there, then it's your choice. If you can afford to do that, that's fine. But anyway, so it's a lot of people that are Star Wars fans are not into the Rise of Skywalker. I'd say part of. I wouldn't maybe go as far as a lot. I'd say part of, but it's definitely out there that it's not a really favourable film. But anyway, let's get into more questions. How did Snoke turn Ben Solo? Well, Snoke was a puppet, was an actual cloned puppet by Palpatine. So Palpatine was the puppeteer yet again, and he was using all types of dark side to turn Ben Solo. And obviously Ben Solo was the grandson of Anakin Skywalker, which is Darth Vader. So he was sort of pretty interested in maybe he's strong with the Force too. See if we can turn him. So it was because so Snoke turned him because he was being puppeteered by Palpatine, and that's how the whole thing happened. So the next question, what was Finn trying to tell Rey? Very good question. It could be left unanswered, this one, but it wasn't left unanswered. He was always yelling to her, for either help or he was just so lovingly connected to her. He felt things for her, but in Rise of Skywalker, I think because it's never actually said in an official way. It may be in the books, I'm unsure. But he was trying to let her know that, he feels the Force. And they started to use his ideals of being a Force user stronger very late in the trilogy, which was towards the end of Rise of Skywalker, but by that point the trilogy was over. So I think Finn was trying to tell Rey that he was Force sensitive. Next question, what is the most misquoted line in Star Wars? Now, I asked actually Michael verbally about this, and he came up with something that was interesting. Now, it's a very minute detail, but it's true. I suppose the most popular sentence in cinematic history is "I am your father." What Darth Vader said to Luke Skywalker in Empire Strikes Back. I am your father. But if you listen to the actual line, it's "No, I am your father." People forget to use the "no," or don't want to use the "no," or whatever it is. But that would be probably the most misquoted line because it's so popular. Anyway, to more questions by Michael from Werribee South. And again, please send your own questions to me. I'm not Mr. Trivia Man, but I can give it a shot. How did Palpatine control Snoke? Well, it was through, dark side manipulation, and obviously he was a clone, so he had full control of this character, of this person, of this alien, whatever Snoke technically was. Anyway, to more questions. Who are the Knights of Ren and what's their deal? We were introduced by the Knights of Ren in The Force Awakens, Episode 7, and it looks so cool. Look, the setting of the Knights of Ren in The Force Awakens was every Star Wars fan's dream because it was so dark, it was wet, it was rainy, it was gritty, it was great. They were a group of dark side users that weren't Sith, but they sort of were worshippers, you could say, and they sort of really were very dirty, very gritty. And Ben Solo, who became a Knights of Ren, was Kylo Ren, was an unofficial leader of the Knights of Ren. And what's their deal? That was it. They were dark side users that weren't Sith, didn't have the Sith powers, but were just worshippers of the dark side, carried out some bad acts, things like that. The next question is, will the New Republic be reconstituted? That's what he said. Will the New Republic be reconstituted? We don't know. That's a story idea for the powers that be within the official Star Wars story writer team. We can only wait and see. That's the answer. The next question is, what is ILM in Star Wars, and is it still owned by George Lucas? No, it was sold by George Lucas to Disney. ILM stands for Industrial Light Magic. It's the creative team that put the special effects from way back in the day in 1977 all the way to the new stuff that was in 6 years ago, from episodes 1 to episodes 9. It's called ILM. It was a big effects production created by George Lucas, sold by George Lucas, Industrial Light and Magic. Amazing. I've been to a couple of their panels at Star Wars Celebration with official ILM members. Amazing. Absolute, from their model making to their visual CGI effects. Amazing. Anyway, this has been quite a long episode today due to the whole big Kathleen Kennedy stepping down and my explanation of what I thought. Anyway, until next time, my friends, keep rocking!